Central banks are planning one of the largest financial takeovers in world history. With each passing day, central bank digital currencies are closer and closer to being implemented worldwide. But it wasn't always this obvious. Since the beginning of time, humans have used precious metals to barter and to trade goods and services. The ancient Egyptians, for example, would use gold as a way to show power and wealth amongst their society. Religions such as Buddhism use gold in conjunction with the holiness of celestial beings and beliefs. Everywhere you look, gold is used for money, jewelry, or religion. So it was no surprise when in 1873, the United States passed the Coinage Act, which officially established a pure gold standard. This means that you could simply go into a bank and exchange an ounce of gold and receive the exact paper amount in return. If you ever wanted to go back to the bank and turn in your paper money for gold, you could do that as well. However, with all good things, the government would find a way to ruin it. 40 years later, the date is December 23, 1913, and President Woodrow Wilson just signed the Federal Reserve Act into law. Their job was simple. They were created to provide the nation with a safer, more flexible, and more stable monetary and financial system. Their three main roles are to maximize employment, keep prices stable, and moderate long-term interest rates in the United States. Since the Federal Reserve was tasked with maintaining a healthy economy, this meant that by law they needed to maintain enough gold to equal 40% of the value of the currency issued. At the surface level, this seems great. Instead of having constant swings of economic despair to economic flourishment, the economy would have a more stable environment to help the nation grow. You see, up until this point, whenever there was a panic in the economy, it would wreak havoc on the fragile banking system. Millions of people would rush to the banks and all pull out their money at the same time. This, also referred to as a bank run, was incredibly dangerous for the economy. By doing this, it would inevitably create a recession as more and more people begin to panic. Fast forward to August 15, 1971. To combat the 4.31% inflation rate, President Richard Nixon just announced to the world that the United States would be eradicating the gold standard. From this day forward, no longer were Americans able to convert their dollars into gold. Instead of the world's reserve currency being backed by the precious metal, it is now backed by the complete faith of the American people. The thought process behind this being that it would discourage foreign governments from redeeming more and more dollars for gold. However, this was a complete failure for the middle class of Americans. Not only did they have to turn in their gold to the government, but they could also only redeem it for a set price of $20.67 an ounce. The effects of this were felt almost immediately. The gold that was on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet spiked by a whopping 69%. This increase in assets allowed the Federal Reserve to further inflate the money supply. For the next 2 decades, the United States would endure record highs of inflation. While the value of the United States dollar collapsed, at the same time, the price of gold and other precious metals soared. See, now that there was nothing backing the US dollar, there was nothing holding the Federal Reserve back from printing more and more dollars. As of today, in 2023, we are still dealing with the effects of the cessation of the gold standard. Currently, as of March, the inflation rate is sitting at 6%. Within the past decade, central banks around the world began researching ways to better control the money supply and combat inflation. The most prominent solution seems to be adopting a central bank digital currency. They claim these CBDCs would enable the public to make digital payments, all while being the safest asset with no associated or liquidity risk. The Federal Reserve wants the middle class to believe that these new digital dollars will help the economy. But this couldn't be further from the truth. This new form of reserve currency is completely centralized. All payments used with CBDCs are recorded on a centralized bank ledger forever. This includes the identification of the person who sent the payment and the identification of the person who received the payment. Since it's completely centralized, the Federal Reserve is able to trace you, tax you, and influence you to do whatever they want. You didn't register to vote? Fine. They will turn off your ability to purchase items at a certain store. You didn't get the most recent vaccine? Fine. You can no longer travel anywhere or pay for gas. You made a controversial tweet? Fine. The Federal Reserve will turn off your ability to purchase firearms. CBDCs will give the ultimate power to the Federal Reserve. By using CBDCs, Americans are forfeiting their privacy and economic liberty. If you believe this is too crazy to be true, take a quick look at China's current CBDC, the ECNY, which is already being used as a surveillance tool to spy on Chinese citizens. So where do we go from here? Since President Richard Nixon announced the end of the gold standard, Americans have seen record highs of inflation. The Federal Reserve has completely taken advantage of the middle class by printing non-stop money for decades. There has been no accountability by Congress to put an end to this cycle, and there's no guarantee they will ever put an end to it. As Americans, we've given all the power in the world to a private institution that answers to nobody. By 2030, the Federal Reserve expects that their CBDC will be in full effect and even responsible for $213 billion in payments. Our only hope as a society is that we can come together to fight against this breach of our privacy and economic liberty.